Mustard on Parmesan. Oh, what will this silly little psychopath do next? I can't wait. Oh, hello there. Good evening and salutations. My name is Charles Pharmaceutical. My friends call me Chuck, but you can call me Sally. Tonight, I am here to introduce a brand new spectacle series called Two Guys and a Movie. I know. Very intelligent title indeed. It will be hosted by none other than Paul Gilmore and our guest, some guy named Dan, who you may or may not have seen before on this channel, but they'll both be there. Now, the premise of this movie is fairly unique, yet complex and simple. They're going to take a movie, such as this one, or a movie like this, in which you may have or may not have seen, but they have. One Sunday, Dan will pick a movie. The next Sunday, Paul will pick a movie. Now, if you haven't, please press the subscribe button, a like button, and that little ding-a-ling ding-dong thingy over there in order for you to be personally notified when each new episode arrives. Thank you.
That's right, movie lovers. Join us here every Sunday at Twin Flicks for a new episode of Two Guys and a Movie. We'll see you there.
Couple of mean guys with fire in their eyes.
Hey, movie junkies. Welcome to our premiere episode of Two Guys and a Movie. This is something that Dan and I have been putting together for the past month or so. So we're going to kick off our first episode with Fandango from 1985.
Oh, and guys, it'll be spoiler filled.
Yeah, I mean, this movie's been out for over 30 years. So if you haven't seen it now, go watch the movie, come back and watch this video and join in on the discussion. But yeah, let's kick it off. So now, I talked to you a little bit about this movie already. I mean, I grew up with this movie. I remember seeing it back in, I think it came out on video in 86 probably. It's back then, movies didn't come out for a year or even two after the theatrical run. And so, yeah, I saw it on VHS. I think I was 8 or 9 when I saw it. And Simon and I, we both loved it. We loved the movie even at that young of age. I remember watching it with our dad and mom, and of course my dad liked it more than my mom did, but because I think it recalled things back in his youth when he was younger. But yeah, I mean this is a criminally underrated gem from the mid '80s. Kevin Costner's first lead role. Again, I grew up with this movie. I loved it. I've been watching it. I watch it once a year, basically.
Oh, I totally see why.
Yeah, and so enough about me. I'm going to hand it over to you because I'm really interested. You know, I don't think I was the first. It was me that I don't think you heard it from the first time from me. I don't know, but I want to know, how did you first hear about this movie? And give me your thoughts when you were watching it and what you thought of it. So I'm going to turn the stage over to you.
I think, yeah, the first time I heard about this movie was this year, and it was our other show, Physical Media Coast to Coast. You bought the movie. It actually was an announcement on Blu-ray.com. We talked about it on the show. I didn't think much of it. Like, okay, looks like, maybe a Fast Times Ridgemont High, Animal House type thing. I might watch it someday. Then we talked about it later. You purchased it, and we had the episode where you showed it. My dad watched that episode. He texted me. He's like, man, Fandango. Haven't heard of that one in a long time. That's a must-see. I was like, okay, I better watch this. And then I watched it. This is the first time. So, man, I was wrong.
So first of all, we're going to dedicate this episode to your dad because
Okay.
he's the one, you were kind of like, well, you saw this and was like, yeah, I'll watch it when I get around to it. But then it was your dad that really spurred you on to watch the movie. And so this is dedicated to your dad.
Well, that's nice. Thanks, Dad, and thank you, Paul, for that. That's nice. But the movie, I really, I have to be honest with you, I watched it twice.
Oh,
Like
really?
I watched it immediately right after again
Wow.
because I had that much fun with it.
Well,
And
I remember you
go
text me.
ahead.
You didn't just say you loved it. You said you effing loved it.
Yes.
And I was like, it was one of those texts. Usually in this series, the whole idea is that we don't know how each other thought of the movie
Right. Yeah.
till the end of the show when we recommend it. But you were like, I can't contain it anymore. I
I
gotta tell
couldn't,
you.
dude. There's no way. I couldn't contain it. I was like, this movie is insane, dude. And then, so it came out in January of '85. So the next month, Kevin Carson's in this one, and then Judd Nelson's also in it, and he had Breakfast Club that was coming out the next month, February. People didn't watch this movie, and I read why. So Spielberg saw this. So it's written and directed by Kevin Reynolds, who became like a longtime collaborator with Costner, and Spielberg saw his short film, which would become Fandango, and Amblin, the company that Spielberg owns, they actually gave him financing and let him make it. Spielberg, I guess, was really upset with the final product that he kind of just buried the film. It was like out like a week.
Really?
So yeah,
Wow.
which I was shocked. I was like, really? He didn't like this movie?
I was
Like,
wondering
wow.
about that because usually when a movie's produced by Amblin, he's titled as one of the executive producers, and he's not on this movie. It's
Yeah,
Frank Marshall
he
and
had his.
Kathleen
I read
Kennedy.
he had his name removed for
Wow.
whatever reason. Yeah, and
Huh.
I was like, wow, it totally tanked, partially because of that, and because it's $7 million budget, and it
That's
made like
interesting.
90 grand. So I was like, that's a
Wow.
fascinating story.
Wow.
I wish there were special features on the Blu-ray.
It makes me wonder because Kevin Reynolds is notorious to be really hard to work with. So it makes me wonder if maybe there's some kind of thing between
Maybe.
Reynolds and Spielberg, and so Spielberg's like, okay, that's it. But that's surprising to me. But
Oh yeah, me too.
and January and February, at least back then, are the movies where the studios would bury the months where studios would bury the movies. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I went on a deep dive after I watched that. I was looking
Oh
all over
wow,
for information about it. And, like they shot in Tulsa, which I recognize the city of Tulsa because I'm from Kansas. I was like, wow, they shot that in Tulsa. So it's, particularly the
cool.
plane scene where he's coming in, and at the end, that city is Tulsa. So, but we'll get to that. Anyways, so you could argue that this movie became like a cult following, and now we have a Blu-ray this year that came out. But you could argue when this came out that Judd Nelson also became sort of a star, partially because of Breakfast Club the next month.
Yeah,
And then, Kevin Costner, I'm not sure when Silverado came out. I think it was the same year.
I think it might have
But
been the year before, but
yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
But then, Untouchables was his thing. But anyways, so this started like the partnership with Kevin Reynolds and Kevin Costner. They wanted to do like Dancing with the Wolves and stuff like that, and Waterworld. But I just thought that was crazy. But
good
anyway,
old
I
Waterworld.
love the movie. I mean, the music, the sound drops. This has some of the best sound drops, some of the best montage editing for like a road trip movie. I was blown away, especially in
Oh
the
yeah,
beginning with the Elton John song "Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting," with the credits roll. I mean, you have the lizards, you have all kinds of these animals that we see now in Better Call Saul credits. But anyway, so the cars are zooming by, the cool cars, cool lines, cool club with the groovers. We have Judd Nelson, Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner leads these guys, these groovers. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm rambling, but I love the movie.
well, I love how it starts out because it starts
Yeah.
out with speaking about music. It starts out with Cream's badge,
Mm-hmm.
and it fades up on Kevin Costner, and so it shows him sitting there in his sunglasses in a half done tux, I think, and right there, right at that moment, that's a movie star. I mean, it reminded me of almost Tom Cruise.
Risky
That's
business type thing.
yeah, that's a movie star, and that's something we do not get anymore. People are famous just to be famous now. It seems like, but and then it shows a I guess if I remember right, it shows a picture of his ex-girlfriend, and he's throwing darts at a picture at his ex-girlfriend, and that's how the movie starts. So we see that he's heartbroken, and he's kind of like almost in an area where he just doesn't care about anything anymore. And then we find out later that he was drafted in the war. This takes place in 1969. So he's down, he's depressed, he's drinking, but he's not the type of person that waddles in his depression. Instead, he wants to party to help himself feel better and to not. Oh, was I on
There
mute?
you go. Now you're back.
Okay.
Yeah, it was on mute.
One thing that I'll get back to you in a moment, but I just want to say one thing that I really loved about this, and this shows Kevin Costner's acting, is in the beginning it shows they're in the dorm, and or what do they call them?
Yeah, fraternity house.
Fraternity house.
Thing,
They're in the fraternity house. Everyone's partying, drinking, having fun. As soon as I forgot his name, walks in.
Judd Nelson.
Is it Judd Nelson?
No.
The
ROTC guy. Was it Kenneth?
Kenneth, the guy who was going
He's
to be
about to get
married.
Yeah, he's engaged.
Okay. So the Kenneth walks in because he's been engaged, and so they're about to they're about to throw him an engagement party or a bachelor party. So he walks in. Kevin Costner sees his face when he walks through the door, and he immediately knows he just broke up with his fiancée. And I love that because nothing's said, but yet it harks back to the beginning where he's looking down, he's looking at his ex's picture, and he's throwing darts at it while drinking and depressed. And so he knows that look, he knows that feeling. And so he immediately picks up, before anything's said, that they broke up. Again, his acting, because you can see it in Kevin Costner's face. He's not smiling. He looks sad for his friend because he knows what just happened. And again, I love that.
He has so much energy to his part. Like he's such an optimist. He's such like, we'll get out of this. Don't worry. He's not a planner. He's just kind of go with the flow guy. You know, there's a way to get out of this. We're being drafted and stuff. So he's kind of the optimist in this group.
Yeah, and then later we find out that it's because he feels like he has nothing left in his life, and so he wants to just, pedal to the metal, just high speed life. We die. It doesn't matter because we're going to live. That's kind of his attitude. And
it takes on the Fandango lifestyle because at the beginning of the movie they actually get the definition of Fandango, which I really liked.
I wrote it down. It says here the definition of Fandango is 1, a lively Spanish dance and rhythm varying from slow to quick. 2, music for this. 3, a foolish act. And when you first watch the movie, that's what you're thinking. Okay, well, this movie is a definition of the third one, a foolish act, because that's all this movie is. It's full of foolish hijinks as they go off on this road trip. As we said, they're drafted into the war, and Costner's plan is to one last road trip, one last hurrah. However, his real plan is he wants to convince Kenneth to go with him to Mexico and go AWOL. But then later on, we find out that really, it's all 3 definitions. At the end, when they have the wedding ceremony, Costner re-meets up with his ex, and he says, "Play the Fandango," and they do the Spanish dance.
What a twist, man! I mean, that was the thing that got me at the end. I was like, he's marrying his ex.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a nice little mystery they had going there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that hooked me good. I was like, wow, this is nice. And you can see the regret in Gardner Barnes, played by Kevin Costner. You can see the regret in his face in that scene. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it just, so that the whole movie encompasses all 3 definitions of Fandango. But yeah, I mean, because everything that leads up to that wedding, you're constantly thinking, this guy's reckless. He doesn't care about anything. All he cares about is himself and having fun. But really, that's not him at all. And we see the real him at the end when he puts together this wedding and everything. But we'll get into a little bit more of that later.
So the Groovers also have, we have Kenneth, Phil, and Gardner Barnes, who's the leader. We also have Dorman, who he's kind of in the background, but he's also the muscle. And he's always reading. He's always reading comic books or reading a book. And he's always doing sort of the right thing. There's a scene where Gardner's on the outside trying to convince Phil to stop the car, because they take Phil's car, which is a really cool car, but he's outside the car. He's like, stop the car, and then Dorman just lets him in, unlocks the door and lets him in.
Yeah,
I thought that was great. And he had some great scenes.
He's kind of the heart of the movie, I think. One of the biggest. He just has a big heart, you can tell, and he cares about each one of his friends.
He's literally carrying Lester the whole movie too.
Which I love that character so much, because he falls asleep at the bachelor party, and then he's just sleeping through the entire movie until the very end, when he wakes up and he's like, "What? What's going on?" And when you watch the movie, it's hilarious because there's a whole flying a plane sequence that's just nuts. One of my favorite sequences that we're going to talk about just a little bit later. But I mean, everything they go through, all these adventures, and he's not just sleeping like in the back of the car. He's in all these different positions. One time, they have him on the back of the car where the rear window is, laying there.
Yeah, I was like, who is that guy? I remember that guy. I was like, I had to think about it. I was like, he's been sleeping the whole time. Wow.
Yeah, it's so funny, the different positions he's in. And when they meet up with those girls at that restaurant, the fast food restaurant, and they've got them laying across their laps. It's just
retro
awesome.
Sonic,
Yeah.
They nailed the time period on this too. I mean, every set, I love that retro Sonic that you mentioned, and just the desert aspect. This felt like a summer movie. I'm glad I watched it now in the summer. It really felt like a fun road trip.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely one of the better road trip movies. I'm curious what Steven Spielberg, if he looked back on it now, what he would think of it.
I have no idea. Yeah, it was interesting.
It's interesting. I will say, now chime in anytime. Just, butt in if you have something you want to say. But I wanted to point out that the movie has... Rewatching it, I mean, I've known this before, but rewatching it for this review, I noticed more so that there's three different tones or moods to the movie. The first two are at the beginning. The third, we already got into a little bit with the wedding at the end. But like we already talked about, the bachelor party at the dorm, shows him depressed, but then it shows this group of guys, is it Kenneth's parents, I believe, come in.
Yeah, when they're showing their butts. Yeah,
to the frat house, and they're all mooning his parents, having a dorm party. You immediately know who these guys are. And it's kind of like that Saturday Night Live skit with Dan Aykroyd and Steve Martin. Two wild and crazy guys. It reminds me of that.
The Groovers are guys that they could be apart for like 10 years and come back and act like nothing has changed. No time has went away. They get along so well. They have such good chemistry. Even though they fight like really like hilariously.
Well, and they fight like brothers.
Exactly. Yeah, like brothers.
Yeah, and that's the guy who we talked about that's sleeping all the time. When we first see him, before he falls asleep, he's completely stoned out of his mind, and he falls asleep. And then you already brought this up. The main titles brings up more of that mood where it sets it kind of for most of the movie, where you hear Elton John's "Saturday Night Is Alright for Fighting" just blasting, and we see them driving down, and they're not just they're not just driving. They're having a time of their lives. They're opening cans of beer. They're throwing the cans out the window. They're yelling and screaming. Mooning truck drivers, you name it, they've got it. One guy starts hanging out the passenger door while he's driving. He gets up on top of the roof of the car I guess they have obviously they've done this before because they have a strap around the hood of or the roof of the car. So he grabs on top of the roof of the car, grabs on the strap, and he stands up and he's like riding it almost like a Bronco rider.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Reminded me of Death Proof, where Zoe Bell was riding on the hood of the car. And
it's funny you mentioned that because I want to ask you a question. Do you think Pulp Fiction, the beginning of Pulp Fiction, has the definition of pulp fiction or pulp? Do you think that was a Fandango reference? Because I read too that Quentin Tarantino saw this movie 5 times in theaters in 1 week. Yeah, he said it's the best. It's like the greatest achievement in cinema for a first-time director is Fandango.
Well, it's funny you mention that because when I was rewatching it the other night, I was thinking, a lot of this stuff is sprinkled throughout Tarantino's movies. Who knows? But maybe the Zoe Bell in the hood of the car in Death Proof may have been
exactly
an idea from that. The title card sequence, like what you just said, where it's the definition of the title of the movie. There's other things that I noticed, just little tiny sprinkles throughout his films. So yeah, I mean, it could definitely be. What I love, going back to the car where they're doing the joyride. Now this is during the entire main title sequence, and I mean it immediately puts you right into this movie. You know who these guys are, you know what's going on, you know what type of movie you're in for, and it's like buckle up because sit down, buckle up because you're in for a ride. It's what it immediately feels like.
Grabs your attention as an audience. You're like, wow, okay, take notice of this. You have to keep. This is not a joke. This is not a drill, guys. This is Fandango.
Yeah, and what's great is that every time when that main title sequence comes on, I just blast the home theater system, and it just blasts through the speakers. I mean, it's just awesome. But what I love about it is that these people are having such a crazy, wild time. Like we said, mooning truck drivers on the hood of cars, on the roof of cars, drinking, hanging out of car windows. And while this chaos is all happening, the guy, the big guy, I forget his name, Norman, he's just sitting there casually. He's just sitting there casually reading his book while all this is going on, like completely, almost completely oblivious to everything that's happening. It's just hilarious. I love all the different personalities that they have, because you have Judd Nelson. I always forget the names of these characters.
He's kind of a straight man, Phil. Where they're driving his car, he's kind of like plays a straight
Phil.
Man. He doesn't do. He's an ROTC geek. He kind of just wants to do the right thing. He's kind of the straight-laced guy, and they like to piss him off.
Well, I would too if I was his friends, honestly, because he's not just straight, but he's kind of like he's a wuss. He doesn't want to put any ripples in the water. He wants everything to be safe and, this is how it is. Yeah, don't stray this way. We got to keep going this way. And so he never has fun. He never just lets loose and have a good time. And so, yeah, they make fun of him through the whole thing. Let's go ahead and get into the plane part, because that part was awesome and just insane, because this really shows, I mean, this scene, I think, encompasses how Phil is and how his friends continually try to yank him out of that mindset that he's in and have fun. So, yeah,
First of all, they drive up to this airport hangar thing, and there's pieces of airplanes scattered all around the runway. There's planes in the hangar, like outside, hanging out, that have crashed. Assuming they crashed into the hangar, they're hanging out, and they go in for a lesson. Gardner talks to the guy to give him like a sort of like a free lesson, and the pilot is just like, yeah, this is here, this is here. He's drawing circles. This is how you do this, and this, that, and it's just a mess with Phil. And so
what I love about it,
intense trainings.
What I love about the pilot, though, is when you first meet him, he's living out of a trailer with his wife, I guess. And when we first meet him, he's in his underwear, eating a bowl of cereal, and you can tell he's stoned out of his mind. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think at first that Kevin Costner, and everyone was kind of messing with him. I didn't think they were really going to allow him to go up in the plane to skydive. I think they were first just kind of messing with him, and then they're just going to say, okay, we're just kidding. But then it just continues to escalate and escalate and escalate. And I love that scene so much when well, like what you're talking about, where he's like saying, do this, this, and this, and this.
Yeah, on the whiteboard, yeah.
Yeah, he has a chalkboard. He's got everyone sitting there, look at his chalkboard, and he's like, okay, you need to go here, then there, then there, then here. Don't do that, but do this, but not that. And then at the end, he's like, now you want to grab onto this, but don't grab onto that because you'll get decapitated, so grab onto this instead. And then it cuts back to them just staring at him talking. It's like comedic timing is perfect in that. I love that character because that character shows up later on too. It's just a great character.
Then Phil goes through like the actual like test run where he misses the mattress when he falls off jumps off the plane.
The poor man's training.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hilarious. The comedic timing in that whole scene is just great. Because like you said, he's showing Phil how to skydive, and he's supposed to jump onto the mattress. So it shows a shot of him from, I guess, this high, so you don't see below him, and he's telling him, okay, now hang on, and when I count to 3, jump. 1, 2, 3. And the camera doesn't do a wide shot. It just stays on that same shot, and then you hear. And he's like, I missed the mattress. It's just, I love that scene. So, and
then Phil's like, I've had enough. I'm actually going to do this. I'll make you a bet. You guys have to go through with the military if I do this. So that's what gets him in the air.
Yeah, because he like runs off. He's like, I'm not doing this, and so finally he does a bet, and they were surprised. They weren't expecting him to place that bet, and they're kind of like, whoa, I don't know, but a bet's a bet, so they got to do it. And the plane that they used to skydive, the pilot's plane, it's just literally like held together by bubblegum and tape. I mean, it literally looks like that. In fact, when the plane goes off, it has a ground shot still. The nuts and bolts are falling off the plane onto the ground.
I love that.
Oh, it's just awesome.
They get up there, and the pilot's wife's like, they took the wrong chute. They took my laundry. I have the chute or something like that. You know. And so
yeah. Well, what's funny is like that because his friends are all sitting there looking up, watching him, and then all of a sudden, the wife comes out, like you said, and says, who messed with my laundry? And she's holding the parachute.
Yeah.
And they're all like, oh, oh crap. So they're scrambling, trying to figure out what to do, how to get in touch with them because he has no radio up there. So now they're scrambling, and I love the music. Because Alan Silvestri did the score to this, and he played it. They did it smartly. He played it straight. He didn't do comedic music, Instead, he played it like it was a horror movie.
Yeah, it kind of is. When you realize your one of your best friends is up in the air with no parachute and about to jump.
And he did the same thing earlier in the movie when the train scene. The car, real quick, the car runs out of gas and they're trying to get it moving. They see a train going past them and they think, well, if they can connect a rope to the front bumper of the car to the back of the train, it could pull them the rest of the way. The music's building and swelling. It's like this kind of like a heroic action type music.
Hey, how are we gonna stop?
And then all of a sudden, nothing happens. Just the bumper just falls off.
I will say that was the part where I was concerned. I was like, if they're actually going to do this, I don't know if I'm going to like this. But I'm so glad the bumper came off, or the grill came off.
Yeah, and again, that shows the power of the music, because if experience that scene without that intense music and comedy, you know what's going to happen.
It's not going to pay off the joke. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. the pilot, he's trying to encourage Philip to jump to the point where he starts shaking the plane, and then Philip finally falls. And yeah, I mean that whole scene is just brilliantly done because you see a POV shot of him going around circles, then you see an establishing wide shot of him falling down, then you see the guys on the ground trying to stop him and trying to save him, and yeah, it's just a crazy scene.
Yeah, the editing was great in this film too. It's like you have like you said, the quick cuts to the guys on the ground with the zoom cuts when they cut to each of the guys on the ground.
Yeah, the crash zooms. It does crash zooms on their faces.
Yeah, we had the POV shot of the ground swirling around, and then it all comes together, and he saves himself.
It's just like to me that's a perfect scene. If you want to, if you're a filmmaker out there and you want to see how to put together comedy, suspense, action, that's the scene to watch. I mean, it's just perfectly done. And again, it makes me wonder, why didn't Steven Spielberg like this? It's crazy,
dude. And then even like throughout the film, as far as like the editing, like there's so many cool ways it's assembled. Like when they're climbing the mountains, you have the fades to the next scene, to the next scene, and even the beginning montage, you have the quick cuts, the quick zooms, all kinds of different angles too. The ground level, to up over the head, on the side of the car. I mean, this is stuff that's duplicated now. I mean, but and this movie is a class act in editing, in my opinion. I was really surprised by that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember who did the editing, but yeah, I mean, actually, let me look it up real quick if you want to talk more about the movie.
Even at the end scene where they're dancing the Fandango, I was like, man, what a sequence. The music is wonderful, and the editing is wonderful. We have like the whole crowd celebrating this wedding, and then we see the close-up of Costner's like reaction and realization, like, hey, this part of my life is probably over. Enjoy it now. And that's kind of the thing how this movie ends. It's like, to me, the end of Fandango is like, okay, this guy's partying and going on their separate lives. Like even Dorman says, like, enjoy the rest of your life. Like that's one of his few lines he has, the big guy. He's like, yeah, nice knowing you, enjoy your life. I was like, wow.
Yeah, I thought it was funny how they all just kind of went their own separate ways, and they're just like, see you around, I guess. Don't know when I'll see you, but I'll see you. The editor is two-time Academy Award winner Arthur Schmidt. He's been with Zemeckis ever since Fandango, and he won his awards for Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Forrest Gump. But yeah,
that makes total sense.
Did The Rocketeer.
Oh yeah.
So his editing style.
There's a similar sequence in The Rocketeer. It's actually to the plane scene. I can see it now how it's assembled. Wow.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, the entire filmmaking process is just great. From the editing, the cinematography, the direction, the acting, everything is just perfect in this movie. And you can kind of tell, there's always two ways you can tell if it's a first-time director. One, they don't know what the hell they're doing, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's a crap movie. Second is what Kevin Reynolds did with Fandango, putting every single thing he learned in film school, he learned from making short films, learned into this movie, making everything work.
He used all the budget. I mean, $7 million, that's quite a bit for 1985, but he used every penny in this. I mean, with the music, considering, I think the music elevates to some of this too a little bit.
Oh yeah, definitely. 100%.
Really, there's some great mic drops. I mean, even what's that song? Sorry, I have to look it up.
Which part?
It's like, I think it's around the Sonic part where they're hanging out and they meet those girls. There's some music there that's really good. Foolin' or something like that. Or let me look.
I can't think what the name is right now. You should be sorry. Don't ever let this happen again. God damn it! I told you. How many times do we have to go through this? Spooky.
Yeah, Spooky.
Yeah, spooky little girl like you.
That was great. Great use of that song.
Yeah. It was also filmed in, I just notice here, it was also filmed in Marfa, Texas, which is about an hour from where I am. Everything's just great in this movie. Let's talk a little bit about the flashbacks. What were your thoughts on how they did I believe there's 2 flashbacks, on the 2 flashbacks?
We have the one in the flower, we're throwing flowers at each other with Costner and his ex, right?
Yeah, which is near the beginning of the film.
Right. And then I think that one is right after he finds out the wedding's possibly called off, and so he's kind of hopeful. That's what I got from him.
It's after they run out of gas of the car and they're all sleeping in the car.
Right. Yeah. So these are kind of dreams, I would say.
Yeah. Flashback dreams.
Yeah, I gotta say that maybe he's kind of like, because he mentions too. Gardner mentions like, I don't think about any women I don't get tied down. He says something to that sort, which we know is BS.
Oh yeah,
because we've seen the beginning, nice try, darling, and then we saw the one flashback. But yeah, I think that was really effective. And the second one is they're sleeping in the cemetery, or is it? No, sleeping under that wrecked down building, or what is it? I don't know. The wooden structure.
When he has the dream, because the second
in the sand.
Yeah, the second dream flashback is in the sand dunes. I don't know where that would be, but
I know. But they're sleeping where though? They're sleeping underneath like the wreckage of the wood or something, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Under newspaper.
Yes, and he's flying and Costner's flying a kite
in the dream. Yeah, it's like a sand dream. Yeah, that guy was kind of strange, but I thought it was really effective.
Yeah, I like the first flashback better than the second. I think the second, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. There's just something about I don't like 100. I don't love about it. I like it and it's effective, but I don't love it. Like I don't gravitate towards it. Maybe it's the way it was, because it has that dreamlike texture to it in the middle of the desert or the sand dunes. I don't know if it's. I don't know what it is.
I thought he took acid when I first watched it. I thought it was like an acid dream at first.
Oh, yeah, it kind of looks like it.
It does, and now I think about it, it's like we have to be. I guess as an audience, they want to remind us like of this X that got away. It's the only thing I could think of is why they used it there.
Yeah, I mean, not when I first saw it because I was only 8, but when I've watched it in the past couple of years, I noticed that because I went a long time without watching it, and then suddenly I went in and watched it again. I had the itch to watch it, maybe 10 years ago or something.
Was it on DVD?
Yeah, it was on DVD. And when I didn't really remember those scenes, and then when I saw them, my first thought was, okay. He's making, like what we talked about, he's making himself out to be like this guy who can't get hurt, this party guy. I'm going to party because I don't want to get hurt type guy. And these dreams make it look like, tell us as an audience that, no, this guy's sensitive. He misses his ex, and he's not the person who he makes out to be.
Yeah, and he doesn't want his buddies to know this, too.
Yeah. I mean, if you've ever loved somebody, and you broke up, you're constantly going to have dreams about that person. That
even comes up in the film too. When Gardner's they go and dig up Dom in that area under it's a rock, and then they have some like hot champagne that's like boiling hot. I'm assuming. Anyway, so he like brings the question to I think it's Kenneth again. Where he's like, have you ever been in love or something like that? Love are kind of thoughts. So if you thought you loved somebody, you've been in love kind of deal. So he's kind of working out his own feelings too, trying to see where Kenneth is at.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that scene. Like what you were saying, they're sitting there on the rocks talking, and I get the sense that Kevin Costner's character is feeling out how his best friend, because really Kenneth and him are best friends, how his best friend's feeling. And maybe if his best friend starts talking about his feelings, then Kevin Costner may open up towards him. So yeah, that's another great scene. Extremely well written too.
Yeah, on the rewatch, I got more out of that scene because I knew who the girl was who was marrying at the end. On first watch, you don't really get that sense because you don't know that it's the same girl.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it all. I mean, this is back to classic filmmaking when everything from the beginning shot till the end all comes together. You know, today there's so many movies where random scenes, random shots happen, and they don't connect to anything. And it's kind of like, why was that there when when the movie never comes back to it?
And real locations.
Yeah, yeah, and real locations. They're not on they're not doing stagecrafting or big CG room.
And that plane, those plane stunts were incredible, in my opinion. I was like,
Dude.
wow, they're flying through a city under a bridge. That looked real to me.
Oh yeah, that was all real. I mean, back then they couldn't do that CG. There's no way. I mean, it was all real, which is insane. You wouldn't think, in watching it, that this has some great stunts, but then when you think about it after watching, you're like, they had a plane up there going around circles, doing flips. They had somebody fall out of the plane going around circles, doing, making like they're going to die. And then, then when the pilot comes back to get to the wedding, he's flying under the radar because the police got him, and so he wants to get. So he starts flying under the radar, which means he has to go almost street level, and he goes underneath the overpass. And I mean, it's insane.
It was like Grand Theft Auto at one point. Yeah. When you're being chased by the cops, your star level's at 5. I mean, he's even like driving it on the highway.
Yeah,
next to cars. Like, I mean,
I love it when he pulls up to the stoplight or stop sign, and there's a car next to him, but he pulls directly next to the car, and he looks over, and he's like, "Hey, is this the street name?" And he's like, "No, I think it's down there. Okay, do you mind if I cut in?" Oh, just great stuff. And that actor, I don't know who that actor is, but he was brilliant in that role.
Truman Sparks, right?
Yeah.
Marvin J. McIntyre.
I want to talk about the ending with the wedding, because that whole sequence is just brilliantly done. Where I guess Kevin Costner is using reverse psychology on the townspeople to get everything that they need for this wedding. So by the end of the movie, they decide not to dodge the draft. Kenneth and his fiancée get back together, and they're going to have the wedding in this small town that they're at. And so Kevin Costner is rushing to try to get everything just perfect for this wedding. And so he starts using reverse psychology on the townspeople, where the making fake phone calls.
Yeah, there's the 3 old guys. They got nothing better to do but help out. It seemed like. And so he's like, okay, we'll try to get their attention. I'll have Dorman call the payphone. I'll pick it up and act like the wedding, like something got canceled. We can't make the wedding. And then they're like, hey, you guys like beer? Occasionally.
It's hilarious because it's like he's on the phone. He's like, what? Oh man, you're kidding me. And he's like, so disappointed when he gets off. And the old guys are like, what's going on? He's like, well, shoot. Because he doesn't cuss in front of them because it's like a small religious town. So he's like, well, shoot, golly. Our champagne delivery just canceled on us. Now what are we going to do? And like I said, the 3 old guys look at him and say, like beer? And then Kevin Costner turns around with that smile and says, why, I think we do. Or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And he does that to get the chairs, to get the lighting, to get everything, the music.
Pretty soon the town is funding this wedding.
Yeah, exactly. It's just brilliant how Kevin Costner's playing these town people. And I love that whole scene. And again, it shows how much Kevin Costner loves his best friend, Kenneth, that he's willing to do this for him, and that he really has come to grips. He's matured a lot. through this whole adventure to the end, to the point where he's like, okay, if my best friend can get back together with his fiance, love does still exist, and move forward, yeah. And if it's to go into the army, then that's so be it. But I'm going to do this for my best friend, because he doesn't end up with his ex. Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. He brings her in on via plane. So Truman comes flying in with. He calls in a favor with Truman, the pilot. Brings in Debbie, and it's like, don't. She's like, don't I know you? Like, or he says like, don't I know you? And she's like, used to. So then like, hugs with Kenneth. I didn't get a sense that I thought like, okay, she's coming for the wedding, whatever. Wasn't totally sure until we got to the wedding. I was like, holy shit, this is the bride. Like how that's a selfless act on as far as Gardner's positioning. It's like, man, he, like you said, he recognized that Kenneth really loved her.
Yeah.
And flew her in, got the wedding organized, and didn't put a fight on.
That makes me think back. Yeah. Now you're talking on my memory, because that makes me think back to the whole movie. In the beginning, when Kevin Costner recognizes how Kenneth is looking when he walks in, she did it again. She broke my best friend's heart. After she broke my heart, now she breaks my best friend's heart. And what I think is interesting too is that it never shows what happened. We don't know, and we don't need to know because it's not important to the plot. But Kevin Costner does not have any resentment towards his best friend, Kenneth.
Exactly.
Which I really like, because a lot of these movies, when they have the best friend stealing the girl or whatever happened, the friend is like, I want nothing to do with you. I resent you. They have this moment where they have a huge argument, and then they make up and they're best friends again. It didn't mess with any of that.
Yeah, you're a groover for life.
Yeah, it's a bond, an oath they made, and and so at the end, like we said, Kevin Costner matures and realizes, okay, well, this is true love, and
I thought that was genius writing, though. That they kind of held her back and kind of had that big reveal. I was like, wow.
Yeah, because we have no idea. I don't even think they mention. Do they even mention Kenneth's fiance's name? I don't think they even don't mention it. Yeah, and so we have no idea who the bride is, and then this big reveal. Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. I just love it.
Yeah. There is a scene though after the dance, after the best man's dance, the Fandango. He does the Fandango with her, and then it looks like he goes in for a kiss or wants to.
Oh yeah.
And she kind of goes like no, and then she kisses him on the cheek, and that's it. She walks away. Then we get that nice close up of Costner. It's like, man, I was like, I just felt it. I was like, wow, this is like he's got to let go of this. This is like the last Fandango. It's just genius filmmaking.
I don't know if you've ever been put in a position. I have, where and it's just, I think everyone has one time in their life, and it's just like, oh, okay,
that's really over,
and you got to let it go. I mean, and then the final shot is him letting go, because he's sitting on top of rocks or whatever cliff, and he's looking down at all his friends departing, and his
the lights are going out at the wedding.
And then the final shot is him standing up and raising up a beer bottle, like, this is it. This is cheers, or this is the end. So he completely changed over the course of the movie, matured and made peace with himself.
It's sort of a coming age movie now that you think about it. Coming of age comedy, road trip, buddy movie. There's a lot of aspects, a lot of moods, a lot of different things going on in this film, and it's only 90 minutes.
Oh yeah, and I love the ending song when he stands up and is just like, finally makes peace with himself and his friends, holding up the bottle of beer, and Steve Winwood's "Found My Way Home."
Yeah.
Perfect song to go with that scene, because he found his way. He found his way home. And
another great sound drop.
Yeah. The music in this is just perfect. Yeah, I wanted to talk about some of the favorite lines in this movie. So do you have any that stuck out to you that were like, well, that's a great line?
When we're first introduced to Costner with the glasses that are like one of the ends is broken off, and he's throwing the darts at himself, not really his ex either. It's like himself, and then he walks up to the board and he's like, "Nice try, darling," or something like that. I love
Yeah.
that. That's a great way. Like you mentioned, that's a great way to introduce the character. And then there's some funny stuff with the arguments in the car. I don't remember them verbatim. And then have a nice life. I think I liked that at the end, the Dorman's line. I thought that was really like, I was kind of like, wow. He didn't even say goodbye, as what Judd's character says, and then they had that shake and that close over the hands, and then have a nice life. Really great stuff.
Yeah, and I love that they didn't say goodbye. It's kind of like I said before, we'll see you when we see you. We're not finished. Two lines that I've loved. One is when Philip says, "You're the most irresponsible person I've ever met." And then Kevin Costner smiles and says, "Well, somebody has to be." I love that line. Yeah, when Costner says, I can't picture exactly what the scene was, but when Costner says, "There's nothing wrong with going nowhere. It's the privilege of youth."
Oh, yeah.
I love that. I think those are two lines that really have stuck out with me.
We talked about like the brotherhood too of the Groovers, and, and the fact that they're going to go 400 miles to dig up Dom.
Oh yeah,
and drink the champagne. I mean that says something about the group, how tightly wound they are.
It's a great movie, guys. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. I'm not sure if it's on any streaming services, but pick up the Blu-ray because it's like $10. It's cheap. Yeah.
If you guys have seen Fandango, let us know your thoughts as well. What your favorite scenes are. Kind of like give us some lines you guys liked. Everything. Be sure to like the video.
Yeah. Again, one of the best road trip movies out there. Better than Road Trip. Better than some other movies. What I liked about it too. When I was first thinking about this movie before I rewatched it, I was thinking, in the 80s, there's that, or like in horror movies where, 30-year-old teenagers, because they casted 20, 30-year-old actors because it was easier to work with than teenagers. And for some reason, I always thought this was like they graduated high school for some reason, and then I was like, man, these guys are old for high schoolers. And then I realized, oh, duh, it's a college dorm. But so I like it too because they're age appropriate. They don't look too old. They don't look too young. The music is age appropriate too, which is a huge, huge pet peeve of mine. I can't stand it when movies have a period piece and they use music that was never even there in that period. Like, perfect example. A Knight's Tale. It's set in the Knight's Age, and yet they're using "We Will Rock You" during.
I didn't mind that. I had issue with Great Gatsby, the Baz Luhrmann.
Great Gatsby as well. I mean, it's a huge pet peeve of mine. I can't stand it. So I love the music, time period music. I love the acting, and they chose great actors. Kevin Reynolds, great.
Great debut.
Yeah, great debut. And as you brought out, Kevin Reynolds and Kevin Costner, they worked together on Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. They worked together on Waterworld. He's produced some movies that Kevin Costner directed. They have a love-hate relationship, and they're kind of like frenemies where like they don't work. If they work together, they're the worst of enemies, but they're friends, and outside of work, they're friends. So it
sounds like the Groovers.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, and but yeah, I mean, everything came together and into making one of the perfect movies, and again, extremely criminally underrated 80s gem. So I think this was a good movie to kick off the show with.
Absolutely.
2 guys in a movie. Next Sunday, come back next Sunday because we're doing episode 2, which was your pick, Kevin Smith's
Red State.
Red State. So we talk about that, and so come back next week, Sunday, right here, Twin Flicks. Next, oh, and if anybody, one more comment. If anybody has a movie that you would like us to review and talk about, let us know down below in the comments. Send a request down below in the comments, and we'll do that. We'll review it for you. All right, guys.
All right, we'll see you on the
Till
next one,
next
guys.
time. Later.